Okay, so welcome back after a month off. I talked to some of you just a few minutes ago and sounds like there was some practice, but maybe not as regular. So I kind of anticipated that, and we're gonna kind of treat ourselves as kind of a little bit rusty and move through some major movements of the spine first. And then this would be the standing week because it's the first week of September. Yay! So we'll do some standing poses as well. So you want to definitely have a block or something like a block, like a soup can works or a large book works. And you'll also want to have your chair, of course, and hopefully by now you have a yoga mat so you're able to keep some traction under your feet, not go sliding off. Okay, so let's take a moment to arrange ourselves in our chairs so that we're not relying upon the back of the chair for support. We're going to start to use the support of the body to keep the spine erect. So the spine is kind of the signal to the brain. It signals a certain attitude. So we know what we feel like when we're slouching. We feel a little dull. And then we kind of know what we feel like when we're sitting up tall. The brain feels a little bit more awake and alive and alert. So place your heels under your knees. And your hands can just sit comfortably on your thighs somewhere. And when you place your hands, consider how your shoulders are aligning with your hips. So we're looking for the direct shoulder above hip alignment. Sometimes it helps to take the chair, kind of bring your hands back onto the chair and roll the shoulder blades in, roll the shoulders back that way, and then keep that, and you can place your hands. So that's a nice way to help your shoulders sit back. And then of course the skull, we want to adjust so the skull is directly above the spine. Sometimes a more subtle way to cue that is to think about your face moving toward the back of your head, because usually it's just a small adjustment that's needed. And then of course we want the chin simply level with the floor. We don't want to be tilting the chin up or down, just a level chin. And then with that, closing your eyes and looking toward your cheeks, away from your brain. And just start to move attention into the parts of your body meeting either the floor or the chair. And inviting these places to become heavier. You might even imagine some roots coming out of your sitting bones, out of your feet. There's also parts of the body that are heavy, but they aren't touching the floor or the chair. There's the shoulders. Release your shoulders down. Your lower jaw should be releasing. So if you have kind of a fixed or rigid or tense jaw, see if you can unhinge your jaw, slacken your jaw. The tongue also rests at the floor of the mouth, which is considered in yoga the floor of the brain. And once you find all these places that are helping support your kind of your anchoring or your groundedness, you might start to notice some softness and some lightness. Softness in the belly, lightness along the spine. You might even sense that you can hold your pelvis, your whole rib cage, and even your skull slightly higher from the floor. And as you keep this sense of buoyancy kind of moving in the trunk, keep your gaze pointed down so that the mind stays a bit quieter. So in yoga, we get really good at holding kind of two opposing ideas at once. Yoga means union. We join things. We put two things together. We're able to do them at the same time. This is really good training for the brain. So feeling at once your groundedness, your heavy parts, and also your light parts. And sitting long enough that your mind arrives into your body. We know the mind likes to time travel. And you can keep your mind present with the noticing of breath, the noticing of sensation, And one other way is to invite a sense of acceptance. So in other words, however you're showing up this morning, just accepting. It is what it is. Once you have that sense of presence, let's join our hands together in front of the heart. And as you're ready to exhale, bowing toward your heart. Releasing your hands. Inhale, lift your head, and let your eyes gently open. And welcome. Get the spine moving. We're going to start with cat-cow. So you might remember this one. We're going to widen the feet so that we have space between the knees. Welcome, Shar. Space between the knees for the torso to move down if that's accessible. You might not go that low, but in case, we're going to make the room. And then your hands will be on your thighs comfortably. We're going to start with our spines rounding. So chin will tuck into chest, belly button will pull toward the spine. The spine will look kind of like a rounded forward bend spine. You're going to dip your head as low as it goes. And then when you get to that low point, begin to move into an arching spine by looking forward, bringing the chest forward, bringing the shoulder blades in. Your back body looks like a spoon, and then you'll come up through a neutral spine. Begin again, moving into the rounded spine, and we're always going to be exhaling as we come down toward the floor when the belly is compressed, and we're always going to be inhaling as we rise. So when we change how we're doing this in a few moments, we're still going to be exhaling as we lower and inhaling as we rise. So our kind of objectives here, not only to move the spine, but to find a very smooth movement pattern. So that might mean you have to make this kind of a limited range of motion, and it might mean you have to slow it down, and it might mean you have to do both of those things. So you're just already here starting to do two things. You're starting to honor the needful in your body, and you're starting to abide by the flow of your breath. So I want you to move with your breathing. As you're exhaling, you are rounding your way down to the floor with the head. And then when you're ready to inhale, start that arching of your back to come up. We'll do this once more, just like this, and then we'll change it a little bit. And once you're up, now we're going to lead ourselves in with the arching of the spine. So this is where you want to think about your breastbone kind of being the first thing to come close to the floor. So leading with your chest, keep your eyes forward, that will keep your neck extended. And then when you get your chest to its lowest point, then you're going to move into the forward bending action. Tuck the chin, bring the navel in toward the spine. Use your stomach muscles to restack your spine. And again, you're undulating. So you're trying to be smooth. You're moving with the breath. And you want to notice. Yoga is way more about noticing than making demands. Off of our mats, we're very responsible adult people. We're making demands on ourselves all day. But in yoga, we're listening, we're inquiring, we're noticing, we're letting the body talk. So just notice any patterns of tension, and we'll do it twice more here. Last one. When you come up, you can bring your feet back in line with your knees. You can change your seat on the chair if you need to. We'll do some lateral movement now. This is the crescent shape. So just grab your chair with your left hand kind of underneath your chair and raise your right arm. And again, you can always modify that arm if your shoulder bothers you with a fully extended arm. Inhale here, and then exhale, lengthening those right fingertips to the left. So obviously we're going to be shifting our weight to one sitting bone. So our work in yoga is to always equalize or to bring evenness back in when there's imbalance. So bringing some weight gently back to your right sitting bone. Also, your right shoulder, it might be kind of flying up. Keep your right shoulder really engaging toward the hip rather than toward the fingertips. Couple breaths here. And if you feel kind of collapsed or shortened or pinched on your left side body, you might need to come out of it a little bit. Pain in yoga is never a good thing. Sensation is, but pain is different. And if there's discomfort, your mind will just kind of sit there and you'll kind of not get very far with a pose. Sensation is good, but no pain. Next time you inhale, use that breath to lift you up. And then bringing your hand down under your chair seat, and we'll raise the left arm. Take an inhale here, and on your exhale, lengthening to the right, but right away, returning some weight to the left sitting bone. Imagine that you're being lifted by a rope through the very top of your head, and this will help encourage your spine to remain very long. Think about the very tip of your tailbone being the very bottom of that rope. You're lengthening in this beautiful crescent shape. Couple more breaths. On an in breath, lift yourself up, and then exhale the arm down. We're going to do a twist today that includes a half forward bend. So you're going to kind of angle forward with your torso. And we don't do this by rounding the back. We do this by tipping your pelvis forward. So if you think about your pelvis like a bowl, you would be pouring the liquid out the front rim. So you can keep the back long when you lengthen forward this way. We're going to cross the left forearm on over the thighs. So if you find that that's too, you feel kind of collapsed, you might need to add a block or something there to raise the arm. So we're always paying attention to what our own needs are. And then you're going to take your right fingertips to the back of your head. And then you're going to lift that right elbow tip up and press it slightly back. And when you do that, you'll feel, hopefully, or you can imagine if you don't feel, the right shoulder blade moving in toward the chest. So we're going to try to turn the chest to the right. You're going to try to look up to the right kind of corner of your room. And also you're putting good pressure down of that left forearm into your thighs or into a prop if you're using a prop. Keep taking that right elbow tip up and gently back, and try to keep your eyes soft. We'll do 3 more breaths here. I find it helpful to kind of push my head into my hand, which strengthens the back of the neck. It always also supports it. Come to the top of an inhale. And then you're going to lengthen back. You're going to now place your right forearm across your thighs. Again, prop there if you need a little more height. Left fingertips to the back of the head. And we're going to take that left elbow tip up and back, which will move that left shoulder blade toward the chest, which will help you turn your chest to the left. You're going to start to look off to the left. Eventually the eyes will track up the wall, but if it's premature, just look kind of outward, even if it's not upward, and give good pressure down through that right forearm. Every time you exhale, you can go a little bit deeper. Every time you inhale, remember the tip of the tailbone up through the top of the head. So you're lengthening the spine. Connecting those dots, tailbone out through the top of your head. One more big in breath here. And then on the exhale, start to turn back toward your thighs, and we'll do a resting child's pose here. So you can slide back on your chair just so you don't do a somersault. You want to have good purchase of your buttocks and thighs on your chair. And again, you can modify this by using your arms as a spacer. Otherwise, your chest comes onto your thighs directly. Your knees are together, your feet are together, the arms are dangling. You might grab your elbows if you prefer. Your head is hanging freely. And it's helpful if you can kind of access the heaviness of the head. It can be used as a prop to help you decompress your spine, which usually sits in one orientation against gravity. So we're giving our spine a nice little break from gravity. And just notice if you can sense your breath with the pressure to your front body, the breath being pushed into your back body and between Those back ribs, you can feel some spreading there, some feathering out. And the nervous system, meanwhile, loves this. It's very soothing. Just a couple more breaths. And now on an in-breath, you can use your hands to your thighs. Engage your stomach muscles, corset the stomach muscles, which will help return your spine upright. And we're going to do one more thing seated before we move into those standing poses. So we're going to do a seated version of gate pose, which will also kind of include another little twist. So we're going to be stepping the right foot out to the side, so the right toes point out, and the right heel should be in line with the right knee. You're going to do your best to position your right knee kind of off the line of the hip, although for a lot of us, especially after a month off, we're probably tight. So you might see that knee kind of more in front of that hip line. So just do your best to get the alignment points there and place the palm side of your right hand against your inner right knee. And then pressing your hand and your knee together, you're going to start to turn your chest to the left, which will not only encourage this deep kind of groin and hip opener here on the right, but again, we're getting this nice little twist. And you can look off to the left. We can encourage better mobility in the upper spine if we stabilize the lower spine by, again, corseting those lower abdominals. If you have trouble kind of accessing that action, think about, sometimes imagery works in yoga when, just telling your body what to do doesn't. Think about your hip bones kind of clamping toward each other. And this engages our transverse abdominals, which helps us stabilize the spine. Sending just a couple more breaths into that right groin region, maybe the hip as well. We all feel things differently. On an in-breath, you're going to lengthen back to facing forward. You can release the pressure from your right knee, and you can just step that right knee again back in line in front of the right hip. And we'll try the left side. So you might have a different experience over here. So just kind of go in with a fresh, open mind. You're going to try to place the heel right below the line of the knee as close to alignment with the hip as you can get. And then again, the pressure of the palm to your inner left knee. And then just begin to turn away from that. You're going to turn your torso to the right. You might even imagine those left side ribs near the armpit starting to come out of the shadows into the light. Try to kind of encourage some deeper breaths here. Remember the idea that poses are like windows being opened, but if we don't breathe, it's as if the storm window is still in place, so it's not as much of an effect to hold a pose if we're not breathing. So the breath is the storm window. The pose is the other side of the window. Wonderful. On an inhale, lengthen through the top of the head and come out of that twist, and you can step your left foot back underneath your knee. And we're going to come up to standing now. So as you're ready, gotta adjust my camera a little bit here. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I purchased a studio light. Lighting was a little weird before, so hopefully I have better lighting than you remember. Maybe you don't notice, but I certainly do. So we're going to put the chair in front of us for a moment. And because we're now standing, I like to use tree pose as a way to kind of initiate a standing practice and to cultivate deeper inner attention. So now that we're standing, it's we might be pulled out kind of outside. So tree pose helps us really kind of keep our attention inside. So you're going to use the chair to help you stabilize. Your fingertips are there. And then you just prop your right heel against your left shin or ankle. And then you're encouraging your hips as if they're headlights to stay even. So you might notice right away the right hip rotates back. So your work is to keep kind of your right hip forward as you press your right knee back. You might think about the right buttock kind of rolling forward to help you do that action. And it might not be perfect, but what counts is your effort in yoga. You're going to suck the outer left hip bone to midline, which will bring the inner left thigh to midline, which will help you feel as if your spine moves like a post into the floor, if the left thigh is kind of a continuation of the spine. And then you might go to one finger on each hand. You might start to play with one hand coming off, or you might be able to bring both hands to your heart center. So you have to kind of figure out where you are today. And then if you are here now with one or both hands up, you're going to just pick a focal point straight ahead, your eyes fixed on the horizon line, which helps your spine really remain neutral here. When we look up, we tend to arch our backs. When we look down, we tend to round our spines. So a steady gaze on the horizon line is a nice way to support the alignment. But of course, once you're looking at something, you're going to invite your attention back inside and really come into real time, noticing all those little micro movements that are flowing here. You might notice your one foot on the floor negotiating kind of some of those movements, how articulate the feet can be, all the tiny working parts of the feet. Maybe you could step the right foot up the leg without losing the integrity. And so as a yogi, as you develop a yoga practice, one part of your practice that really becomes stronger is being able to discern these things. If taking the next step in the pose is going to hold the pose in integrity, or if the ego is kind of the driver there, you have to discern if it's a good choice to go to the next step. And again, another one of those choices is maybe raising the arms. If you do raise the arms, do your best to fully extend the arms, meaning the elbows are straight. And this will mean you have arms touching your head. And then you're going to try to leave the pose with as much attention as you brought into the pose. So you're going to move your hands back down. You might lower your hands to your chair then and step your foot down. And then just give your standing leg a good shake, just to release any tension that accumulated. That's never the point. We want to start fresh for side two. So once you're ready, you have your right foot being the ambassador between you and the floor. You'll stack the left heel against your right inner ankle or shin. And you're going to draw that outer right hip bone to midline. You're going to press the left knee back without the hip rotating back. And then maybe play with less help from your hands, maybe moving to one finger on each hand, maybe one finger alone, maybe starting to move hands, one or both hands to the heart center, finding your focal point. And then maybe there's that inner signal to take the arms up. If you take the arms up, one piece of evidence that was a good choice is that it strengthens your pose. If you take the arms up and you feel like you're going to topple, it's probably a better choice to keep the hands closer to the heart center for now. So even when we hold poses, remember, they're never stagnant. They're always dynamic. There's always micro movements, there's always breath, and there's always a tension. And then you're going to start to leave the pose slowly. As far as you took it, you're going to start to kind of work those steps back. And once you have your left foot down, give your right leg a good shake to release any tension that might have accumulated. So we'll put the chair off to the side. We did those crescent poses seated in our chair. I wanted to do them again standing. So you'll separate your feet hip distance, and your toes are right in front of your heels. Remember, when we have our feet on the floor, we want good space. We want the toe pads to be broad, meaning the big toe to the small toe, there's as much space as we can bring. The big toe ball mound to the small toe ball mound also broad in there. And then we want to be broad across the heels. Okay, so capitalize on your feet. Yogis end up having really large, broad feet, which might not be an attractive thing, but You can tell a yoga person when you see all the space between their toes and these kind of big broad toes. Very exciting. So we're going to take the arms up again. You can modify this. And just try to feel the length of your body kind of flowing out through the fingertips. And this is crescent pose. So we join the hands. Sometimes I do a little bit of, it's not really a classical thing to do, but I lock my thumbs, which gives me a little bit more power to straighten the arms and to lengthen up through the fingertips. You don't have to, but if it works for you, it's perfectly fine. And then you're going to try to take a nice big in-breath, feeling your length. Exhale, you're going to lengthen to the left with the fingertips. You're going to lengthen your whole spine to move to the left. And remember when we were seated, the sitting bone grew lighter. Now you might notice that your right foot is lighter. So stepping deeply back into your right foot. So notice how we get a lot of space in the side body, but not only through the lifted arms, we can get space coming into the right side body, stepping into that right foot. So we always want to work lines of energy in both directions. A lot of times the obvious direction is the upward exciting energy, and we don't capitalize as much as we can on the grounding or the rooting energy. So stepping into your right foot, maybe notice a little bit of length occurring in the side body once you do that. And then on an in-breath, lift, 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 lift. Exhale, release your arms. So one thing I noticed is when we move to the left here, everybody, including myself, I saw it on myself too, is your bottom arm elbow bent, okay? So I really want you to keep that bottom arm elbow tight, and this is only for those of you that are have your arms extended up. So that'll be kind of what we're gonna think about on the side too here. Okay, so we're gonna raise the arms. Maybe lock the thumbs, maybe not. Straighten your arms. Take a nice in-breath here, inhale. Exhale, lengthening to the right. So it's kind of easy to forget about that bottom, in this case, right arm, and have it kind of hinge. Our lines of energy are much cleaner and stronger if we keep our joints extended. This is why pillars in a room don't have angles. They're straight up and down. They're stronger that way. Good. And now inhale, that looks better. Inhale, come up. And exhale, release your arms. And now you're going to hold mountain pose. So your feet should be where they need to go. You might want to encourage more space if you kind of let a shrunken up foot happen. Shoulders in line with hips. We don't want to flop into the belly and shorten the back. Sometimes that happens for some of us. They'll turn sideways to kind of exhibit that. So make sure your tailbone moves in. You have a neutral pelvic tilt. Your shoulders, hips, and heels are in a line. Your skull is right over your spine. You want to have essentially the same length to the front of the trunk as you have to the back of the trunk. Maybe the eyes close, maybe they don't. Your balance and stability is our first priority. So if you're not closing your eyes, maybe just lowering your gaze without tilting your chin so that you can quiet the brain a little bit. So mountain pose is really the fundamental pose behind all the other standing poses. So we're going to just spend a couple moments here thinking about a few things. So consider the horizontal line running across your buttocks. And it's in the center of the buttocks. So not the hip, not the underneath part, the center of the buttocks, the horizontal line. I want you to imagine that pressing forward into your front body. But if we just do that, that creates a sort of imbalance in the body. So we're going to match it by taking our thighs and imagining that we're pressing our front thighs towards the back thighs. And again, we're really good at holding two ideas at once. So you're going to do the same action, but do both at the same time. So you're going to do your buttocks moving toward the front body and your thighs moving toward the back body. Meanwhile, your legs are firm, your knees are extended. That means they're not hyperextended, meaning you're not locking them out or popping into the backs of the knees. So for some of us that are hypermobile, you have to micro bend your knees so that you don't hyperextend. Squeeze your thigh muscles. Sense all of the surface area of your feet. And then remember, tailbone out through the top of the head, like there's a rope there. Lifting that buoyant, light spine. Even the pelvis, rib cage, and skull float a little lighter from the floor. The shoulders remain heavy, fingertips are heavy. Let your eyes blink open and shake out your limbs or do something with your limbs to give them a sense of being refreshed and renewed. And now we'll put the chair over to the right side with the seat available. We're going to come into triangle pose first. And then you're going to step your feet wide. Reminder here that when we do lateral poses, which means the legs are to the sides of the trunk, we ideally have one of our own legs worth of space between our feet. So that's a one day, someday thing for some people. Eventually that will happen, but not today. So do your best to widen your stance. You're going to turn your right toes out 90 degrees and your left toes in 15 to 45 degrees. So if you look at your left foot, your left heel should be farther out than your toes. It feels awkward. We have some things to do to adjust so that we don't feel awkward. So take hold of your hips. And even though your torso wants to kind of steer to the right, you're going to steer the trunk so that your hips and shoulders are back to facing the broad side of your mat. When you did that, hopefully you didn't just rotate your right knee. So we want to keep your right kneecap looking at your toes. So take a peek at your right knee. Is it looking kind of wonky, kind of to the inner side of the foot, or can you turn your thigh muscles so that your kneecap is looking at your toes? Okay, so do your best. How do we do that? How do we turn our knees? We do it by moving the flesh of the upper inner thigh towards the outer thigh. So imagine the inner thigh moving over the front of the thigh towards the outer thigh. Okay, so there's a lot of like very delicate manipulation of the body so that we get these alignment points right. Okay, so steering your trunk without the knee rotating. Let's take the arms up and open. So with the palms facing up, feel how active the upper arms are. We're going to try to keep that, isolate just a rotation from the elbows to the fingertips so the palms turn down now. So now we have contrasting rotation in the upper and lower arm. Big inhale here. Exhale, you're going to lengthen to the right with your torso. And then you're going to place your right hand down so that it sits beneath the line of the shoulder. You also want to place your right hand down so that it's in line with your right leg. So not in front of it. For most of us, that's where we would go, is front. Okay, so we have left hand on the hip for now. Good. So I want you to roll your right buttock toward me or toward the camera. Roll your left hip back. Your shoulders eventually should be stacking in alignment. So we don't want that left shoulder kind of sloping forward over the mat. We want to draw it back. Think about having a bun on the top of the head and someone's pulling it to lengthen the crown of your head away from your sacrum. And now the finishing cherry on top is to stack the arm, but that's only if your shoulders are in alignment. So if your left shoulder is kind of more forward than your right, you won't stack the arm yet. That piece will develop later. Keep a sense of length to your right side body. So from the hip to the armpit, I want you to really feel spacious. Take your head slightly back. These look really good. For a month off, these look really good. Make sure you're breathing, that you're not white knuckling this or waiting it out is another expression. Good. And now I'm going to have you come out of the pose by lifting through your top arm, lifting through the top of your head and planting your feet. Lift, 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 inhale, inhale, inhale. Good. And then turn your toes forward, release your arms, step your feet together. And now we'll try the other side. That looks really good. So one way you can practice if you want a little bit more feedback to your alignment, and we won't do it together as a group today, but just so you know, you can do a really excellent supported triangle pose against a wall. And I know I can't feel that top shoulder touching the wall, so I have work to do to get into alignment. So the wall is a great teacher. If you're just kind of fooling around in your house and you want to try that, it's a great way to know if your body is truly on that plane that you think it is. Sometimes we think our bodies are doing what we want, and then we look at it and realize they aren't. So again, the wide stance, left toes are going to turn out to the left, right toes slightly pitching in. Steer your torso back to shoulders and hips squaring with the top of the mat, the broad side of the mat. But then check out your left knee. If it's looking off to the kind of the left front corner of your mat, we have to move the inner thigh toward the outer thigh to get the knee back in target with the toes, okay? All right, let's take the arms up and open. Get really active with the upper arms. You might even tilt the pinkies up and the thumbs down to kind of exaggerate to get your upper arms what you want them to do, and then keep that, rotate elbows to fingertips. Good, inhale here. Exhale, lengthen toward that chair, and you're going to place your hand beneath the line of the shoulder, also in line with your left leg. For now, right hand can sit on the hip. Roll your left buttock toward your front body, roll your right hip back toward the wall behind you. Take your head slightly back. Lengthen through the top of your head as if it's starting at the tailbone. Good. And then maybe you get that cue that you can take the arm up, and again, a good sign that that was a good choice is that it kind of emboldens the pose. It increases the fullest expression of the pose. If you feel like it just made you kind of topple or wobbly or kind of some of the wise actions disintegrated, then maybe take the hand back to the hip. And spending a few breaths here, holding these wise actions, inviting the deeper breath flow. Step deeply into your right foot. Remember that, how that can help increase length. So stepping deeply into the right foot encourages more spaciousness to the right side body. And now on an inhale, lift yourself out of the pose, use your head, the top of your head, use your top arm, and plant your feet. This will help you come up with good space in your body. Turn the toes forward, release your arms, and then step your feet together. Nice work. So come back to mountain pose. You might start to be able to narrow the distance between the feet. Eventually our feet are joined in this pose, but always again, stability is our first priority. We all have different shapes to our feet. So instead of saying join the feet, just try to see that your second toes are in line with your heels if you are joining the feet. For some of us, that means there's a little space between the heels. Shoulders in line with hips. The skull in line with the spine. The gaze is lowered or the eyes are closed. Move the midline of the buttocks forward and the horizontal line across your front thighs, move that back. So you feel very compact. There's an expression about this pose that I love. There's an outer body compactness which creates an inner body spaciousness. Now we'll blink the eyes open, shake the limbs out, let it go. Okay, so we're gonna do side angle pose. So the chair will be back to the right. This is a pose where we put one hand down. Eventually it's on the floor, but for this class, it's on the chair seat. And it's the same leg setup as triangle pose, except we have a 90-degree bend in the right knee. So that means you'll have to move your chair away enough that you have space for your knee, your right knee, to be above your right heel. So this pose will remind you of what we did seated on the chair with that gate pose, where we kind of opened the groin and we kind of turned away. We turned away from the bent knee side. So I just want you to take your right hand to your inner thigh, wherever it fits, or it doesn't have to be your knee because that would probably make you lean. So wherever it fits to keep your torso upright, pressing there, you're just going to encourage the rotation of your torso to the left, only to the point where we are getting the shoulders and the hips squared up with that long edge of your mat. Okay, and once you have that, you're going to try to maintain the position in the legs, and you're going to lengthen toward your chair. You're going to angle your trunk toward your chair, and you'll place your right hand down. Now we are going to move the right hand in front of the line of the knee. Okay, and if there's contact between your wrist and your knee, that's a good thing because you can use it kind of as leverage to help you turn the torso. So with your with your left hand on your hip, using that combination of pressing your wrist or whatever's touching your knee, start to roll your torso from the right side to the left. And then the arm that goes with this pose, the top arm, we start with a vertical arm, but then we rotate the arm at the shoulder. So you're going to turn your left palm to face the right, winding the arm in this kind of inwardly way, and then aligning that left arm with your ear. And now you can see why this is called side angle pose, because essentially we create this diagonal slash with our body. So I saw a few of you take the arm down. That's perfect. If you take the arm down and the hand is on the hip, use that to keep rolling the shoulder back, that top shoulder back, and to help plunge that right shoulder blade toward the chest. Okay, so you don't have to have that arm up. Good work. So we're going to inhale, lengthening out of it. You can come all the way up. Good. Turn the toes forward and then step the feet together. So I just want to say something. This class is kind of cumulatively building. We've formed a group. You guys have returned. Thank you. And so now we're going to do things just kind of starting to move out of certain things we did initially in this class. So you might remember initially when we were in this class, we would leave poses coming a lot into downward dog. But now I'm starting to kind of teach you guys to use the actions in your body to come out of poses so that we come back upright. So if you still feel like it works better in your body, it feels better to come out of a pose through this downward dog, then you're going to do that. But you also now have the option to come out using your own effort. It's a little bit more strong. So you can decide for yourself which way you need to come out. And it might be just a day-to-day pose-to-pose thing. It's not like you have to have this blanket rule for yourself. But I just want you to know that we're going to start to come out of the poses differently than we have been. Okay, so we have to do that setup again where we have the knee above the ankle. We have enough clearance with that chair that we can align there. And then again, you're just going to take your left hand and press somewhere on the inner thigh and help your torso turn to square back with that long edge of your mat. So just spend a little time there. You're also training that knee to stay, like we did earlier, pointing at your toes rather than doing the knock knee thing that it likes to do. So a few breaths here. And then try to maintain position that you've established here with these strong aligned legs. You're going to lengthen your torso toward your chair. You can place your hand down so that your hand is in front of the line of the knee, so that your outer wrist and your inner knee have a connection. Use that to help you leverage the continuation of rolling the left torso toward the right, rolling the right shoulder back. Just like triangle, we want the head to slightly move back. And then you decide if you're going to take that top arm. You might try it and decide it wasn't a good choice and bring it back. So arm starts vertically, we rotate so the palm faces left, and then we align the straight arm against the ear, behind the ear. We'll stay just a few breaths. So wherever you've taken, however far you've taken the pose, just stay a few breaths. Another thing that happens here, and I'm not seeing it on you guys, but I know it happens for me a lot, is your head drops. So keep your right ear magnetic to your right biceps, okay? And now you choose how you're gonna leave. You can inhale and lift yourself up, or you can face the chair and do kind of that downward dog release that way. Turn your toes forward, lower your arms, and step your feet together. finding your way back into mountain pose. So I like to put mountain pose between different postures so that we have kind of a palate cleansing moment, but also time to notice how our poses land. Every pose has an energetic signature. And so if we take the time to just kind of notice after we do certain poses, we can start to know the poses kind of on a more cellular level than on a cerebral level. We kind of know them and how they make us feel, how they open certain parts of the body, how they leave the nervous system, how they leave the breath. Also noticing if your mountain pose has grown any steadier over the course of this practice so far. You might notice some self-talk. There might be praise, there might be a little bit of scolding. Just remind yourself all practice is good practice. And now as you're ready, you can open your eyes. I want to do a few poses that aren't lateral poses, but in the interest of time, we're going to do one more, which will be Parsvottanasana. So we'll use the chair seat on the right end of the mat for both sides because we're going to be facing the chair. And we're going to step the right foot. You'll probably just have your toes kind of right under the edge of the chair seat, and your left foot will step back. And reminder here that this pose, we are not on a balance beam. That would be too wobbly for the hips. So you want your feet, the distance of width between your feet to equal that of your hips. So that means your right foot is closer to the right leg of your chair. Your left foot is more in line with the left leg of your chair. And then you're going to steer yourself. So your hands are right under your shoulders. You're going to steer yourself by cutting the outer right hip back and rolling the outer left hip forward to compensate for the rotation of the hips that happens with these asymmetrical legs. Okay, so you're rolling right hip back, left hip forward. We want our hips level. Same with your shoulders. We want level shoulders. Look forward for this beginning part, and you guys look great. You want to have a little dip between the shoulder blades. You want to have a nice arch in your neck. You're inviting the chest to broaden and spread. And then on an exhalation, to whatever degree you can, you're going to take a forward bend. So this might mean you just bend your elbows. For some of us, we might be able to move to the forearms, but it's been a month maybe since you've done this pose. So honor where the body wants to be, at least initially, and then eventually you can deepen. But if you can get the head to surrender, that is a good thing to do, no matter which kind of stage of the pose you're in. Let your head just kind of surrender down. Don't hold the head up with your neck. Keep working the outer right hip back, the outer left hip forward, and also kind of squeeze your hips toward each other like your hips are vice grips. Try to bring some weight into your right big toe and your left small toe to compensate for the momentum that kind of pulls to the right here. Your legs should be firm. Your knees are stabilized by your thigh muscles, meaning if I were to grab one of your kneecaps, it would not move around. So your legs are firm, your knees are extended. They're not hyperextended, but they are extended fully. We're going to stay 5 more breaths. And after you come to the end of the next exhale, you can inhale, begin to look forward. If you're on your forearms or elbows are bent, start to come onto straight arms. And then you're going to try to step your left foot forward and your right foot back. So we'll set up the second side. I didn't say this, I don't think, but remember that, maybe you don't remember, but the feet, the angles of the feet here, we have the 90-degree front foot. So those Left toes are pointing straight toward the left edge of the mat. The right toes are like 60 to 80 degrees. So not really turned out a lot. They're almost looking at the same direction as the left foot, just a little slightly turned out. Remember to space the feet so you have clearance to level your hips. So we're on those long arms. We're going to cut the outer left hip back. We're going to roll the outer right hip forward. Imagine there's a little teacup on your sacrum. It's not rolling off to one side. So this is also about leveling the sacrum. Look forward. Try to spread your chest by rolling the flesh of your inner arms forward. Roll the inner elbows forward. And then keeping as much of this length as you can, you're going to start to lower down into whatever degree of a forward bend you can, bending elbows or propping your forearms on the chair or some other prop. And then letting the head weight just surrender. Remember, it can be a tool to help the spine decompress. All that sensation in your legs, give it some breath. Try to bring weight to your left big toe, right small toe. There's 3 more breaths here. We're going to use an inhale to come up. So on your next inhale, just start to look forward, move onto your hands, long, straight arms, bringing enough weight down into your hands that you can bring your right foot in line with your left. And then help yourself come to standing. And then we're going to come back to seated. Okay. So once you're seated, take your feet wide. Make sure you have a lot of the chair underneath your buttocks and your thighs. You can slide pretty far back. We're going to do a seated forward bend. So the toes are angled out 45 degrees. The knees are nice and wide. We're going to be sitting forward so that we can let the head hang and the arms be free. So some of us have longer arms, and if you have excessive arm length, rest on the backs of your hands. It's a little more soothing for the shoulder joint than having your hands kind of holding you back. We want to be able to just kind of surrender. And then your head will hang down. So think about the top of your head, the crown of your head, gently magnetic toward the floor. And this will help you surrender the spine. And I know, Linda, sometimes you have some deep compression issues with the diaphragm. So make sure you use your arms on your forearms. I know you probably know this at this point, and I don't have to say it, but if it's too deep of a forward bend, you have to either put a prop to support your abdomen or back off a little bit and prop your hands on your arms on your thighs. If we don't have certain issues, pressure on the organs is a really good way to massage and detox, kind of flush the organs in a healthy way. But of course, like I said earlier, pain and cramping, we don't work with those. We modify around those. This is another really good massage for the hip joints. We're just going to stay about 5 more breaths. We don't want to come up quickly. We want to come up with kind of good care. So I want you to start to embrace, kind of grip your stomach muscles, supporting your spine. Bring your arms onto your thighs. If your arms were hanging down, come up slowly. I'm just going to finish off sitting quietly just for a couple minutes, this time using the back of the chair. So make sure you're supported at this point. In classes where we're not using a chair, this is the final resting pose where we're lying flat on our backs. So we're really trying to be as passive as we can, but sitting in a chair requires some effort, of course. So using your chair as much as you can, you're going to have your hands palms down as far back toward your hip creases as you need to get the shoulders above the hips. With your eyes closed, just kind of gently looking toward your own cheeks. Imagining the skin of your face releasing from the hairline all the way down to the chin. Softening the tongue inside of your mouth. And scanning your body and just kind of seeking out anywhere that's still in a contracted or effortful state. Inviting these areas to surrender. Watching the body breathe on its own. Checking in with the shoulders, that they're truly heavy and surrendered. And once the face really relaxes, you might feel like you're lightly smiling. Sometimes you see images of practitioners and it looks like they're actively smiling, but this is actually the face just being in a surrendered state. It takes more effort to frown than it takes to smile. We're going to take a deep breath in and just try to release the breath out over the count of 6 beats, just 6 slow counts. And we will do it one more time, but if you need to break it up with an easy cycle of breathing, make sure to do that. Deep breath in and then a slow release of your exhale over the course of 6 beats. When you get to the bottom of that exhale, just resume your easiest breathing. And we'll open the eyes and sit forward a little bit, bring the hands together in front of the heart. I thank you all for practicing with me today. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right, you guys. Yay, it's so good to be back. So send me feedback if you have any, and we'll just keep moving along here. Send me email if you'd like to be on the recorded class list, getting it every week. I know I got a few of your names, so if you've already told me, you don't need to tell me again. But let me know if you want the every week recording. All right, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.